On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1998. We're going to be taking a look at Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey, and they're going to be performing When You Believe. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this is one of those videos that I have been looking forward to probably for a couple of years whenever it got added to my request list because of the voices on show, but also here in the UK, in the tabloids, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston were two artists that were almost put up against each other, and the reports that they didn't get on and all of this kind of stuff. And it tends to be the case that the media, if there are two artists that are similar or two bands that are very popular, and they can even be different styles of music, but they're for some reason competing against each other, which isn't what music is all about. But it's almost like you had to choose one camp. You're either in that artist's camp or the others. But anyway, there's a similar thing here, and I assume it was the same over in the USA. But this is a collaboration, so we get to see them sing together, and from all of the reports that I've actually read in real life, they got on very well. And interestingly, this is 1998, the exact year the auto-tune dropped with Cher, with her song, which had a very similar title to When You Believe, but it's definitely not that song. So let's jump into this and see how they get on.
Many nights we prayed with no proof anyone could hear. In our hearts, hopeful song we barely understood. Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. Ooh, yes. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe. Somehow you will. My Lord, you will when you believe. Sing. In this time of fear, when prayer so often rules in vain, hope seems like the summer birds too swiftly flown away. Yet now I'm standing here, my heart's so full I can't explain, seeking faith and speaking words I never thought I'd say. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe. Somehow you will. You will when you believe.
So I'm going to jump in here, and just to say that this doesn't have auto-tune or pitch correction on it, mentioning that at the beginning, that didn't really take over for another, 4 or 5 years and then onwards. So this is a totally live vocal that we're listening to, and it's amazing how similar the voices are. And their stylizations, the things that they do with their voice, because what you'll notice throughout this whole performance from both of them is just something that they did throughout their career, which was tailing off lines and having, you know, trills and runs and things in their voice where you almost feel like there's not enough space to have a run, but they'll throw one in there. We've got the pitch monitoring software on screen as well. That will really highlight actually that when even when you're listening to great vocalists like this, they're not on lines all the time. And especially when we start out, and it can often take a little bit of time for a vocalist and just any vocalist to find their pitch, especially when they're leading into a song and there's applause and cheering and they haven't got that reference point. And I think we have this with Whitney, but let's listen again. And I'm just going to take down the instrumentation so that we can hear the voices a little bit more clearly.
Many nights we prayed with no proof.
I mean, straight off the bat, we've got this many nights and pray, and this kind of little tail off. Blink and you'll miss it. And the thing that Whitney does with these little runs is she doesn't go pray and make it really obvious. She kind of goes pray, and it kind of blends into nothing, but you can definitely hear it in there.
Proof anyone could hear.
And there, I mean, good example, the B3, I mean, she's kind of right between notes there. So it's actually very sharp of the B3, but still kind of getting a handle on the pitch once the crowd have started to be a little bit more quiet.
In our hearts, hopeful song we barely understood.
I mean, the thing that you need to have in order to do these runs, not only vocal flexibility, control, but range, because we're looking at the A sharp 4 here and the run went down to the A sharp 3. So we've got an octave's worth of range in a run. So this isn't going from the verse into the chorus like we have in so many songs where you'll spend a lot of time the octave below in the verse, and then for the chorus you hit the high note, which is an octave higher. We've got in a split second here an octave that we're spanning. So, I mean, it's obviously massively impressive from a range perspective, but from the control perspective and just having the ability to do it in the first place.
Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. Ooh, yes.
So here we actually get a held note, and this is the E4 with this consistent vibrato. And you can see that this vibrato is so controlled but so mainstream, so contemporary, because we're not going up by a semitone or below by a semitone, we're right over the note. And we've seen in lots of other analysis videos how when that vibrato is right over the note, going above and below equally, you get a really easy to listen to sound. It's not making a statement like with musical theatre and opera, where the vibrato is quite excessively above the note and sometimes goes below the note just by a fraction because of the drama in there.
There can be miracles when you believe.
And it's amazing because when you do hear a held note, it stands out more because of all of the runs that are going on all the time.
Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill.
And when we go down to this F sharp 3, I want to point out how Whitney's voice, when she does go down there, she goes, nah. It's obviously I'm a guy, so it's easy for me to do it, but her tone isn't dramatically different from the rest of her range, even though she's going down to what would be a low note for her.
It's hard to kill.
You know, it still makes sense with the rest of the voice.
Who knows what miracles you can achieve?
And as Mariah comes onto the stage. I just want to take it back, and we'll listen to this in slow motion, because again, blink and you'll miss it with these runs that Whitney throws in. So she's going, miracles. She's hitting all of those notes, but in a split second. I'll tell you what, listen on.
You cannot achieve.
You can achieve. So those are all the notes. I mean, you really got to concentrate to try and remember what the notes were, and then to kind of pick them off and find exactly where they are. And again, stylistically, this is something that as a singer you might want to do, or you might just want to go na 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 and just stick to the basic melody of the song. Again, it's totally up to you, and it's up to you as a listener whether you like this much change in pitch. And listening to how quickly she executes this, hitting the notes, not only ascending but descending in these runs, I'm starting to think that maybe she had to concentrate more on holding a note and applying vibrato, because it's almost a subconscious thing that her voice goes and just kind of picks out those notes. Because it's happening so quickly, it doesn't seem to be a conscious thing. Her voice will just go there, and again, it's massively impressive. She's picking out notes from the scale here of the key of the song. So the accuracy and it's not even the knowledge. I don't think there's theoretical knowledge going on here, because it's just something that her voice does. She's got an ear for it. She can pick it out. She doesn't need to know or read the notes before singing them to know where they are. She's just got this naturally in her voice. And because it happens so seamlessly, I'm thinking that maybe it's just a subconscious thing. Like for some people, the vibrato is just a subconscious thing that comes in automatically. And I think for Whitney, and maybe for Mariah as well, their runs and the little things that they do with their voice are just their voice, and that's what happens. But let's listen on.
My love, you will when you believe.
And there we had it. I mean, look at the notes we've got going on here. We have the B3. Na. So that's the note of the melody. And na na. You know, she's hitting, you know, the B3 down to the H sharp 3, and she's kind of going between those. I think we've got a little run in there as well. Again, I mean, you could pretty much listen to this whole song in slow motion. I mean, the isolated vocal, because the amount of notes we've got going on, there are so many that, yeah, you do miss them all when you listen to it the first time through. And then Mariah comes in. Let's have a listen.
In this time I feel when pressed so often.
So here, starting, na, 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 na. You know, it's actually quite straight now for Mariah.
Rules in vain. Hope seems like.
And now, when we go down to this low note for Mariah, I think you get more of a dramatic change. And this is something that sometimes artists do intentionally, that they're just putting a little bit more body into the bottom end to show that they've got that note at the bottom of their range. Sometimes when a vocalist goes low and goes, you know, they're kind of going down and it becomes airy. They haven't got ownership of that note. It's kind of, yeah, it sounds like it's really at the bottom of their range. But yeah, with Mariah here, if anything, she's kind of making a point that she's got that at the bottom of her range.
Hope seems like the summer birds.
I mean, we've got so much technique going on here, which is to be expected, but listen to the way that Mariah puts air in her sound, and it's not falsetto, it's a head voice with air.
Hope seems like the summer.
So she's kind of going, a little bit more connected there, and just lets it, It's almost like, yeah, there's air in there, and there's so much air, the vocal cords only just come together. It's like, kind of like that. So, I mean, yeah, loads of technique. And that little run at the end. I mean, this could go for years listening to all this in slow motion, but... You know, a little run in there, but I'd say not quite as dramatic as Whitney's runs in the beginning. Stylistically, I mean, this is a very similar approach, that they're both tailing off lines all the time, and we're very rarely ever seeing a held note with vibrato. If we look through this whole, you know, isolated vocal, we can go all the way through, and it's like, well, where are the held notes here? You know, we don't get any long lines being held with vibrato. So let's just go back to this. So we've got notes that are all kind of around where our melody sits.
My heart's so full, I can't explain. Seeking faith and speaking words I never.
And interestingly there, the that would have been a B4. But yeah, because she's kept that in chest voice, you can see it just peaks beyond the A sharp 4, because she's bringing up, you know, chest voice into what is now a higher note that she has been doing previously in head voice. So that's why I think it just got a little bit caught.
Words.
You know, it's kind of like, oh, reaching up for the note. But, you know, it's a live vocal, so it doesn't really matter. And then, when she then goes back into head voice, we'll probably see these exact same notes, but now being hit with, you know, a lighter sound, maybe a bit of air in the sound.
I never thought I'd say.
So here we're now in exactly the same place as we were here, but we're now released into head voice. And then we have this more dramatic run when we're leading into the chorus.
There can be miracles.
And now listen to that full release into that B4. So this is now, you know, higher than we were previously, where that chest voice kind of got a little bit caught. But you can hear just before the vocal cords connect, you get that cry.
Miracles.
And let's listen to it in slow motion. So it's like we hear the different stages of the vocal cords coming together. It starts with air, it starts with a cry as they come together, and then when they connect, the note comes out. So you get, let me just correct, I'm going to listen to that in slow motion again, because listen for air, cry, note. So, I mean, it happens really quickly, but I mean, it's just a part of so many great singers' voice that they can do this. It's like that perfect vocal cord connection, because the vocal cords are going through the process effectively in exactly the same way that they did when they were kids, when they were babies and crying. The vocal cords do that. It starts with air, it comes together with then the vocal cords connecting into a cry, and of course babies aren't trying to hit notes, so they're just crying, but they've got perfect vocal technique. And that's the point. When you're listening to a great vocalist, you have this process of air, and sometimes the air isn't as audible, but because Mariah's kind of leaning into this, we hear the air, we hear the cry, we hear the note.
When you believe,
great example there. When you believe, you know, really light and airy.
though hope is real, it's hard to kill. Hard to kill. Who knows what miracle you.
And this is where it's interesting as well, because when you're singing with somebody else or singing a duet, and there are only two voices, in order to harmonize with each other, the lines have got to be the same, so that you can obviously sing the same notes, you know, the distance apart, whether it be a third or a fifth, or whatever you're maintaining for that vocal harmony. So when they're singing notes and they are moving those notes stylistically, obviously that's not going to work as well.
It's hard to say.
Actually, Mariah does this quite a lot. She goes, so it's just a semitone, and she just kind of, puts it there for a split second. But obviously when you're listening to it in slow motion, you can spot it a little bit more easily.
Hard to kill. Who knows what miracle?
So at this point, we've now been in harmony with each other, maintaining those intervals. So now this is really cool because they've worked in their stylizations in harmony with each other. So they've practiced this to make sure they're both hitting the same notes at exactly the same time. We'll listen to it in slow motion so you can appreciate it. And when I say about their voices being really similar, this even goes as far as their vibrato. If we actually bring in Whitney's vibrato, which you can see just blending in, so this is Mariah and this is Whitney. If I leave it halfway between, you can see how this beginning section, which is Mariah's voice, blends into Whitney's voice. So the vibrato, and I always reference vibrato as the fingerprint or the thumbprint of a singer's voice, all of their expression is in there. When we're looking at the two voices, look at the frequency. It's pretty much identical from Whitney's. I mean, it looks like just one held note, but these are two separate voices going on. So we've got a pretty much identical frequency. Look at the range that's being covered. Exactly the same. The pitch, we're straight over the line. We are above the note. We're below the note by equal amounts. That's the same with Whitney's voice here as Mariah's voice. So the main thing that you get from this, obviously the tone's going to be different, but they're so similar that the expression of their vibrato is pretty much identical. So it's literally a case that you could just copy and paste one over the top of the next one, but it is two different vocalists. So amazing to have a look at that. But like I said, they do have very similar voices, not only with that, which is a really deep part of the voice that you wouldn't expect to be exactly the same, but with their stylizations as well. So now we've got more vocal ad-libs going on, and this is where I can understand for some people it becomes too much information. It's a little bit confusing because we've got two lead voices that have just been harmonizing with each other, so they've got that relationship. The two voices are singing from the same place effectively, not only pitch-wise, keeping those intervals, but it's the way that the ear interprets what you're hearing. That, these are two voices working together. But now we get into this part where we've now got two voices that are doing their own thing. And this is why when you're watching a band who might have, two lead guitarists and they might have a rhythm guitarist, so, three guitars in all, this is why they always take turns with solos. For example, when have you ever been to a gig and two guitarists have gone off into the solo at the same time and are playing different things? It never happens. And the reason for that is it's just too much information, because you can't distinguish, which lead voice am I listening to? And this is the point, that with vocals, with lead guitars, they are now your focal point. It's the lead voice, whether it be an instrument or an actual voice, that is your focus. So when you've got two lead voices that now don't have that relationship of harmonizing with each other, they're now two separate lead vocals, and your ear doesn't really know which one to listen to. So, it could even be the case that for one vocalist, it's just too many notes. It was too fast to be able to appreciate what happens. So people might not necessarily understand it because it just kind of came and went too quickly. And when you don't really understand something, you think, oh, I'm going to move on to something that I do understand that makes more sense to my ears. And that's just subjective musical taste. You know, it's just what you like and what you don't like. So anyway, thank you guys for requesting this particular video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comments section below. As always, let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!